He'll be like a chase row. No one want to pick him up. No one wants to be around him because the vengeance of the Most High is going to be upon this man.
Right.
You understand? So we at that time now. We at that time now. Okay? You also have like blacks, brothers and sisters. They got what is called the Black Gun Club based in Atlanta. I watched the video. They out there shooting targets and they training. See, people not putting up with it, man.
Right.
And I know it's a little different generation that we living in now, but back in the 1900s and the 60s, brother, our people stuck together. Our people stuck together. But now the society, the government is a little slick with it now. You understand? They're a little slick with it. But we're going to rise up. But there have to be a revolution first.
Right.
Now, the brothers and sisters out there fighting in the revolution, yeah, it have to be a sacrifice. People going to lose their lives in revolution. And for us, some of us will become martyrs. So when you read about the resurrection. So that's why we got to meditate and see what's going on and then get our minds out of this fearful spirit. This is reality. See, these ain't no false flags or no false call. This is a reality. The brother was murdered, and blacks are being murdered. So this is real. Okay, because you're gonna have like races and nations helping us out. Like I said earlier, they always have. They always did. Protected Israel, and the Most High put the Spirit in them to do that. Because a brother sent a text last night. He said in Portland, there's more whites out there protesting than blacks. That's damn near everywhere, man. So you're going to have different races of people that's pushing this thing. Okay, the Most High's in the midst of that too.
Right.
See? Because look at when we came out of the Babylonian Empire. Who protected us to march back in Jerusalem and to build Jerusalem? The Persians. They was on post, on guard. No other nation touched us until we got in Jerusalem and started building. Then you had little scatters start coming in trying to give us problems with the wall and the temple. But the Most High always got people that's not part of you. Mesmerized and they're hypnotized by the Most High Spirit.
Right.
Okay, now, when you check the history, I'm going to go into scriptures later. When you check the histories, you read about the Idumeans. Now, give me a hand. Who were the Idumeans? Show me some hands.
I would say the Romans or the Edomites.
The Edomites. Now, when Jerusalem fell in 70 AD, the Idumeans was fighting just as hard as the Israelites to keep Jerusalem. Now, why do you think they was doing that? Give me some hands. Why were the Idumeans fighting just as hard for Jerusalem than the Israelites were fighting?
Controlled it.
Matter of fact, who were they? Give me some hands. They were Edomites. But what happened to them in history? Wasn't a forced conversion was put upon them? Wasn't they wasn't they forced converted to start taking up our customs and our laws? Yeah, the Idumeans. And that happened, let me write this down. I want y'all to look this up. John Hyrcanus the first, and I believe 125 BC. The Idumeans was forced. Forced conversion by John Hyrcanus the first in approximately 125 BC. Now, when you read in the book of Maccabees, I think in first or second, in one of the last chapters, the last verse, it got John's name there, but it don't tell you John Hyrcanus the first. It just got John. And he was the son of one of the Maccabees by the name of Simon. Simon the Maccabees, you had Judas Maccabees, Jonathan Maccabees, and so forth. So John Hyrcanus the first was the son of Simon the Maccabee. He went and forced conversion on the Idumeans. And when you read in the history, it said that was the first time that was done. Forced conversion. Done by the Israelites. Okay? And in 70 AD, the Idumeans thought that they had a hand and they was part of Jerusalem. We Jews too. Because if you look at the Herods.
Right.
The Herod, he was called what? The king of the Jews.
King of the Jews. Right.
Because he converted, his ancestor was Idumean, Antipater. And all the Herods were, Israel looked at them as part of them. But they was so-called Jews. And some of the Herods were dark-skinned. Because the number one Herod married women of color. He married into the Maccabees family. Right? His wife was Miriam the first, the Maccabee. See how that worked? Go check the history. So the Idumeans was just as much fighting as the Israelites trying to save Jerusalem, because they looked at themselves as being part of this. Okay? Now, let's go to the book of Obadiah. Yabal. The book of Obadiah, read the 15th to the 17th verse. Book of Obadiah, 15th to the 17th verse. And Big Judah, Manatazah, get me Ezekiel 35, 5 and 6. Obadiah 15 to 17. When you get it, call it out and let's start reading.
The book of Obadiah, verse 15.
Come on.
For the day of the Most High is near upon all the heathen.
For the day of the Most High is near upon all the nations. Read on.
As thou hast done.
You hear what they say? As you have done. Read on.
It shall be done unto thee.
It shall be done unto thee. The things that's going on now, it said, as you have done, it shall be done unto thee. Read on.
Thy reward shall return upon thine own head.
It said, thy reward, all the brutal beatings, murders, rape, castration, lynching, shall be turned upon your own head. Continue.
For as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain,
Israel, go ahead.
So shall all the heathen drink continually.
Right, go ahead.
Yea, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been.
And they shall be as though they have not been. That's all that, right? Give me Ezekiel. Come on, Judah. Ezekiel 35, 5 and 6.
Ezekiel 35, 5 and 6.
Come on.
Because thou, excuse me, my eyes are messing with me,
Okay.
has had a
You want some reinforcements?
Okay. Let me start it again.
Okay, come on.
Because thou has had a perpetual hatred and has shall
Come on. Let me switch it. Your ball. You got that?
My eyes ain't good.
Ezekiel 35, 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Ezekiel.
You know, we got a wounded soldier. You got to bring in some reinforcements. Come on.
Ezekiel 35, 5 and 6. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel.
Who was that talking about? Esau. Edomites. Come on.
By the force of the sword.
And you see that today all over. All the way from the early 1900s, slavery, the 60s and so forth. And you see it right now. Go ahead.
In the time of their calamity. In the time that their iniquity had an end.
So the Most High is trying to clean us up, bring us back by the teachings of the ones that's out there bringing the people back to their true nationality, bringing them back into the laws of the Most High, teaching them about Yahweh Shai, and showing them where they messed up and where they transgressed against the Most High. So they're trying to bring the people back because their iniquity is at the end of it. But the white man just keep pushing this line, pushing this line, pushing this line. But the Most High said, you kept beating them and killing them when their iniquity was getting ready to close. Come on.
Therefore, as I live, saith the Most High Yahweh.
Who said that?
The Most High Yahweh. I will prepare thee unto blood.
The Most High said, therefore, as I live. And you know the Most High can't die. When was the Most High created? Okay. So he's not going to, he said, as I live, he's going to prepare them to what? Blood. Go ahead.
And blood shall pursue thee.
Right.
Since thou hast not hated blood,
Right.
even blood shall pursue thee.
And they love blood. Especially this police department, man. And we're going to get into when did they take on that mentality. It goes back to Nixon. After Nixon was Gerald Ford, then Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and then the Ronald Reagan administration. Ronald Reagan administration with the war on drugs. When he had that no-knock thing. And you get the minimum sentence for crack cocaine. And the war on drugs, the penitentiaries is filled up. And with that war on drugs from Ronald Reagan, you got the narcotics officers busting in people's homes and their apartments with their guns out, killing innocent people or injuring them. And the officers never get charged with civil, or they never go to jail. And that's coming from Ronald Reagan pushing this thing. And also it escalated under 9/11 with George Bush Sr. with the war on terror. And they kept pushing this thing until they started giving the American Police Department, they started giving them military weapons, which in the past, they didn't have weapons like they got now. And the weapons that they're getting is the same weapons that the U.S. soldiers was using in Iraq, in the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, and Homeland Security gave about, I think it's a $2 billion grant to bring in these weapons and to supply the police department in America. And they are taught to act the way they act. I remember, I believe it was the second summit that we had. The first one was in D.C. The second one, I think it was in North Carolina. There was a brother there that was a police officer. You know, everybody was coming up speaking and so forth. So he got up and spoke. You know, we didn't know who the brother was, but he got up and spoke, and he started running down the police department. He said, look, brothers, they are trained to nothing. Listen to what you got to say. They are trained to take you out. They are trained to kill you, and they will shoot you. So he was pleading with us, said, look, man, whatever, just do what they tell you to do. Don't try to fight with them. Don't try to get aggressive with them. And he's a police officer. I forget where the brother was from, but he came to the summit when it was in North Carolina, the second summit. And I think some of the brothers got this information because he wanted to show the brothers, okay, you out there in the streets, brother, or wherever you go, just don't get aggressive with them. Because all they know is beat you down. Stop resisting and just beating you upside. You trying to get out the way from getting hit in your head, man. Stop resisting. And they hit you and knee you. Stop resisting. You're not even resisting. You can't even circle. I told you, they reaching for their guns. Yeah. So they are taught this militarized, aggressive mentality they are told to act that way. And under Trump too. You understand? They are taught to act that way. And that's where we at, brothers. Now when brothers and sisters in the world start fighting back, that's when they're going to slow it down. You can bring in the National Guards. I mean, when I was about 7 years old under martial law, I seen the National Guards come through the city. And I was down south at that time. Doing a martial law when the Black Panthers, when the Martin Luther King days, the invaders that was down south, they were to protect Martin Luther King and to be his security. But when they got to the Lorraine Hotel, the people told them, or when they got to the hotel or the motel, they was told that Martin Luther King's people wasn't going to pay for their rooms. So they had to leave. And then the black police officer that was with Martin Luther King supposed to secure him, they dismissed him too. So everybody that was to protect Martin Luther King, they dismissed him. And Martin Luther King was left wide open. It was a setup assassination. Because you had the invaders. The invaders were similar, I would say similar to the Black Panthers, but they was out of Memphis. And they was there to protect Martin Luther King, but they was told, which was a lie, that his people wasn't going to pay for their rooms, so they had to leave. So they got rid of them. They got rid of the black police officers. They got rid of the other people that was with him. And Martin Luther King was there by himself, with nobody to protect or help him. You understand? Okay, so it would be all out revolution like in the early 1900s. I want y'all to go y'all write this down and go look this up. In 1919, in Elaine, Arkansas, it's called the Elaine Massacre. It's also known as Red Summer. And the red comes from all the blood that was spilled. About 237 blacks, men, women, and children were killed at that time, and only 5 whites killed. This was in Elaine, Arkansas, and this dealing with the sharecroppers. You know, to show you that we always stood up. Back in the early 1900s and in the 1960s. You know what a sharecropper is, right? The sharecroppers that's living on the white farmer's land, and they working on the land and so forth. And what the sharecroppers, they would have like a $500 rate for his cotton. But the landowner would come and say, hey, well, you use the material, you use the supplies, that's $600 and such dollars. So now subtract 500 from 600 and such. The sharecroppers is still in debt with the landowner. So therefore, they started complaining, and there was a union by a brother by the name of Robert Hill. He created this union to fight against that. And the whites came by, y'all better get out of here. The blacks said, we ain't going nowhere. So the brother posted about 6 shooters on the outside of the church they was holding this meeting. And then a gun battle broke out. One white ended up getting killed. And then the rumor went out that the blacks was on a rampage killing all whites. You know they gonna throw that lie there. They killing all the whites in the town. You know. So they called in the military. But what happened, a lot of brothers was from World War I. They was back at home. So they merged with the people and started training them, and they started arming themselves and started fighting back the police and everything. So they called in the military. And a lot of the blacks started hiding in the woods and so forth. So when the military came in, some of the military blacks saw the military coming in. They thinking, okay, the military is for us. They're going to do something. So they come out with their hands raised. The military shot them down with machine guns. Yeah. Yep, so that was called the Elaine Massacre in Elaine, Arkansas back in 1919. Now, if you look at 1919, Rabbi Matthews was out at that time.
I'm sorry, what's
Rabbi Matthews. That's, he and Rabbi Bivens were together. Our elders, Marsha and Yaiqua, they spoke, and Ariah, they spoke more about Rabbi Bivens. But Rabbi Bivens and Rabbi Matthew were together. So Rabbi Matthew started the Commandment Keepers in Harlem in 1919. So they had a lot to talk about back then. Because Rabbi Matthews, I say he was a young man, about 27 at that time. So there was a lot going on, even in the time of William Crowley. William Crowley was born a slave, and he was in the streets teaching in the late 1800s. So they had a lot of information to put out there. Just like we got a lot of information to put out there. You know what I'm saying? So it's revolution all over. You remember in Jerusalem, there was a revolution in Jerusalem before 70 AD, when Christ was on the scene. When they arrested Yahushua Christ, who did they ask to be released?
Barabbas.
Barabbas. Now the history on Barabbas, what was Barabbas? He was a man of action, right? They would just ask, hey, we want Barabbas if he was just nobody or just this other guy. So what was Barabbas? He was a revolutionary. So they wanted a man of action. Because Yahushua was doing what we doing, just teaching, prophesying, and telling the people, this is going to go down. You got to get yourself together, fear the Most High, the laws and so forth. They looked at it as a man, no action. But Barabbas is going to fight this system. He's going to rise up against this government for us. So release Barabbas. And during the apostles' time, the apostles had their disciples out after them in Jerusalem. 65 AD, 66 AD, 67, 68, 69, then 70 AD. The temple was destroyed. 73 AD, the last stronghold was Masada, ended up being destroyed. But you had revolutionaries out there fighting, right? But the disciples, descendants of the disciples, they still had to teach. They still had to put the Most High's work out, right? But you had the Romans coming into Jerusalem, intimidating the people. They had control of the temple, the monies and everything. Setting their eagles inside the temple. Israel looked at that as idolatry. Coming into the temple on Passover, intimidating the people, talking rough to the people, the women and the children. And then the revolution broke out. And during this revolution, you had revolution groups called the Sakari. Y'all read about them? The Zealots. You read about the Zealots. John, write these names down now. Or y'all need me to write them on the board and you can watch the show. John of Giscala. Look him up. Revolutionary.
Giscala?
Giscala. Giscala. You had other brother, Simon Bun Giora, another revolutionary. And then Eleazar ben Simon, another revolutionary. See, the Most High got people set up to do certain jobs, and they have certain positions. If anybody can find this scripture in the Apocrypha, the Most High speaks about he have 4 weapons that he would use, and one of them was wild beasts. And I forget what scripture. I think the storms is one, and it's 2 more. So with that, the Most High also used people, and he used groups to get his point across. Okay, to fulfill his means, to fulfill his work. He do use people. Okay? Come on.
John of Giscala, Simon.
John of Giscala, let me write it down.
They were all Sakari or just?
Well, it was like someone was Zealot, someone was Sakari. Sakari was an offshoot of the Zealots. Sakari means daggermen, because they carried the dagger and they would run into a crowd and they would start sticking traitors or people that they thought that was for the Roman system, you know, and then they would disappear through the crowd. You know, they call them dagger men. Yeah. You like that, huh? So these are revolutionaries. right? Simon Giora. This is a little history I'm giving you too. And Eleazar ben Simon. Go home, look it up, and when I see you again, or do another class, I'm going to ask you about what I've taught tonight. And I want you to look this stuff up. Look up John Hyrcanus the first. Look up the Idumeans and how they was forced to convert. Okay, look up John Giscala, Simon Bagiora, and Eleazar ben Simon. Look that up. Okay? Yeah, that's right. The Department of Homeland Security gave $2 billion in grants for the local police department to obtain military weapons. Okay? And the police department never had the type of weapons they got now. They didn't have that in the past. So when they saw that these gangs was having these AKs and all this stuff, they said, y'all got to get us something. Okay? But that was a setup too. Okay? Now, we read about the Red Summer. In 1919, there was riots everywhere. Y'all ever heard of the Chicago riots in 1919? Y'all read about that? Okay, go check it out. Go read about it. In Columbia, Tennessee, 1946, a riot where a black woman went in the store, took a radio to get it fixed, and the white had sold a radio or didn't give her radio, and she brought her son with her. Her son was an ex-military man, and they got into an argument in his shop, and the white owner hit the brother's mother. So what ex-military is going to stand there and let you hit his mother? So he hit the white man, knocked him and beat him. They got to fighting all in the streets and so forth. So the word got back to the rest of the blacks. So the whites was rounding up in the city to attack blacks, but there was blacks already up on the roof of buildings, man. You had ex-military men in there too. When the whites came, they started shooting down on them. See, that's how we were back then. See, we stuck together more back then because we definitely knew the depths of our enemies back then. Now they kind of being slick with it now. Give you a little money and this, you know, all this other stuff. They being slick with it. See, what the white man invests in, this government invests. There's a few things that they really invest in. They invest in their weaponry. They invest in their science. And they invest in the mind, in the brain. They study and they learn about their enemy. They invest in their enemy's mind. And they did that to us, or with us, with the Willie Lynch. They invest in how these niggas think. How can we control them? What would make them tick? And all other nations do the same thing. So they know us well. But we would have to change that program. You understand? Anybody heard of the Deacons of Defense? You saw that movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me write this down.
They're on Netflix now.
Okay, y'all go check it out. Now, these are movies, but these are true incidents. This is an incident with when brothers got together and they started protecting the black community. This was down in Louisiana. And they made the movie, y'all know about Forrest Whitaker. Forrest Whitaker played the main guy of the Deacons of Defense, that black group. And the director, y'all heard of Bill Duke, right? The brother? Yeah, Bill Duke is the director. Yeah. So this was in, Deacons of Defense was in they organized in 1964. And Malcolm X died in 1965. So there was a lot of things that was going on back at that time. You understand? Y'all ever heard of a brother? Let me write his name. Huh? What about Robert Williams? Heard of Robert Williams? You heard of Robert Williams, sister? Yeah, he from Monroe, North Carolina. Organized a group of blacks called the Black Guard. I'll write this down. Black Guard. Where they was protecting the black community in North Carolina. You understand? So what happened, they tried to charge him with kidnapping, but he fled the country. He went to Cuba. Remember when Castro was in power, Castro said, whatever you do in America, you kill a cop, whatever, you're welcome in Cuba. That's where a lot of the Black Panthers went, to Cuba, right? A lot of them went to Cuba. Castro said, welcome. What's the sister that's in Cuba? Asada? Yeah, she's in Cuba. So the brother fled to Cuba. Him and his wife, and they went to parts of Africa, and they was invited to come to China. So they went to China, but when the brother came back to the States, United States, they arrested him and tried to put that kidnapping charge on him, but they dropped it. Then him and his wife moved to Michigan, went to the University of Michigan Institute of Chinese Studies. Now, the brother been to China and he's studying Chinese studies. Now, he was one of the main individuals that really helped the relationships of communication with America and China. That brother. Go read about it. Go look it up. Robert Williams. Okay. Yeah, he opened up the diplomatic relations between the U.S. and China, but he died in 1996. Go check it out. And him and his wife, they wrote a book called Negro with Guns. Go check it out. And that book influenced who? Huey P. Newton. So he brought that into the Black Panthers. And you seen the Black Panthers going in the courtroom with their guns. They marching with their guns. So the book influenced him. You understand? So our history, regardless of what's going on, our history from Hebrew Israelites up until now, we always been fighters, brothers. Whether from the tribe of Judah, Benjamin been fighting their cause where they at. The Northern Kingdom tribes been fighting their cause wherever they at. You understand? But what's really going to really change this thing, and